Real lasting motivation isn't something that you can create out of nothing, and it's also not even the thing that you should be focusing on. Because if your goal is to get yourself to do something that you don't really feel like doing, you don't need motivation, you need something else, and that's exactly what we're covering today. Hi and welcome, I'm Amanda, a busy full-time working mom, and I help women just like you be more aligned with their feminine energy despite all the masculine demands in their life. Below, you'll find a link to sign up for my weekly newsletter where I share all kinds of valuable stuff about how to become more aligned in your feminine energy. So here's the thing, motivation, we all want it, we all think we need it, but it's not something that's actually sustainable over time. And it's also not something that we can control or create. It comes and goes. And that might sound like bad news, but it's not, because motivation is not the solution to us accomplishing our goals. We think that it is, but it is not. Because motivation is just simply the feeling of wanting to do something. And that's a luxury that we don't always have. However, in this video, I'm going to teach yourself how to move along with your goals even when you don't really feel like doing it. Because as we've established, unfortunately, motivation is not constant and it doesn't always show up when we need it most. Now, you've probably heard about dopamine. It's become quite the buzzword in the last few years, but for good reason. Because you don't need motivation, you need dopamine. But caveat, you don't just need any old dopamine hits, you need the right ones. And that's what we're talking about today. But we're going to get to that a little later in the video. So this video might seem a little all over the place, but I promise it's not. And it's going to seem a little bit out of place and disorganized because I'm not talking about motivation in this video. Because as we've already established, you think that you're looking for motivation. That's what you think you need. But what you really need is tools that will actually help you to accomplish the things that you need to, even when you don't feel like it. Because motivation, you can't just create it. So we're focusing on the actual tools that will help you get from point A to point B being your goals, and everything in between being all the stuff you don't really feel like doing, but you need to. The most important concept that we can grasp here within this conversation is the concept of shifting your identity. This is something that I have experienced in my own life, and it wasn't until I experienced it that I truly saw the power in it and really understood it. So my example is, for so much of my life, I had been unhealthy. I grew up eating kind of junk all the time. My mom wasn't the healthiest cook. She loved me dearly, but she wasn't the most healthiest cook. I also had some deprivation binging issues and went through some stuff in high school. And as I just started moving out, cooking for myself, I'm such a foodie. I love food. That was my thing. I just prioritized deliciousness over health for so long until I decided I'm not doing that anymore. And while I would still identify as someone who typically didn't eat very healthy, I would go on diets and I would lose some weight, and then I would be deprived, and then I would gain it back. You know the yo-yo diet cycle. But when I finally just said, I'm done with this, I don't want to be this person anymore. It wasn't, I don't want to eat junk anymore. It was, I don't want to be a person who eats so much junk anymore. I don't want to be that person. I want to be the person who prioritizes health above all else. That's who I became, and at that point, it was no longer a matter of willpower. When you can shift your identity, when you can just sever ties with the version of yourself that you no longer want to identify as and just adopt the identity of someone new. It sounds so simple, which is why I have a hard time explaining it, but it really truly does work. And the best way that I can explain it is when you truly shift your identity, it's no longer a matter of willpower, and that applies to every single thing. If you want to start a business, you adopt the identity of a business owner before you've made your first dollar. Because when you do that, you do all the things that are necessary to become the person who then makes $100,000. And it's more about the actions, but the difference is with shifting your identity, you're not doing the $100,000 actions as the person who doesn't even believe that they can make $1. No, you're making the $100,000 actions as the person who identifies as the $100,000 moneymaker. One of the most powerful things that you can do to sort of manipulate yourself into doing things that you don't really feel like doing is the concept of habit stacking. We all have habits, whether they be good, whether they be bad, whether they serve us or whether they are a disservice to us. Regardless, we all have habits. And habit stacking is the way of adopting a new habit in a way that is as seamless as possible because you're stacking it onto something else. I know someone who applied this concept to the idea of tidying up their house before they made dinner every day. And they always wanted to set out to do that, but always had a hard time actually executing it. She would always want to get off work, have her glass of wine, and that be it. But then she decided to add the habit of tidying up to the glass of wine. So it was a 5-minute tidy up before she had her glass of wine. And it's the idea of connecting these things so seamless that makes these habits very easy to adopt because you're adopting them into something in your life that already exists. Now, before we get any further into kind of the conversation of forcing yourself to do things that you don't want to do, that's not actually the narrative that I want this video to have. And it's not my opinion, and it's not how I live my life. So it's not from which the perspective that I actually want to deliver this information. So now is the time that I want to sort of loop in the conversation of feminine energy as it relates to motivation, because if you've been on this channel for any amount of time, you know that just about anything I talk to always comes back to feminine energy because everything in life does. And how it relates to this conversation is that nothing says aligning with your feminine energy more than listening and tuning into your intuition. So I need to say this at some point, so I'm just going to say it now. Before you start asking yourself, how can I force myself to do XYZ? I need you. You need you. Your energy, your intuition needs you to sit down and journal maybe multiple days, maybe every day for the next month, and really ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why does it feel hard? Because it's not out of the realm of possibility that the reason why you don't have any motivation to do whatever thing you're trying to accomplish, it's not out of the realm of possibility that the reason why that's so hard is because it's not for you and you're not supposed to be doing it. And it may take you really asking yourself those questions over and over and over again and really, really listening to your intuition and tuning into and aligning with your feminine energy to really get that answer. So I know that that's not the information that you came to this video looking for, so I'm not going to dwell on it anymore. But it probably is the most important thing that I have to say in this whole video, because why would you push yourself to do something that you don't want to do when, if you really dig deep, it's something that you don't actually really want to do, even though on the surface you think that you should. Next, so often we think that we need motivation, but really what we need is confidence. And when I talk about confidence in this context, I'm not just about thinking that you're amazing and that you can do anything. It's more so about the trust that you've built with yourself. Say, for example, you want to start a social media business of some sort. And so you tell yourself, I'm going to upload 1 video a week. I'm going to post 1 reel a day on Instagram. You are going to feel such a block for that if you've never done it before and you've never proven to yourself that you can, especially if you've maybe had failed attempts in the past that are similar to what you're trying to do now. So how you build up that confidence and therefore that motivation that's tied into that confidence is simply by starting small, because confidence is trust in yourself by proving to yourself that you can do these things. You can do what you set out, and not just about the capability, but trust that you're actually going to show up for yourself to do them. So there are a few different components to this, and I think one of the first ones is so important, which is to do things that you actually enjoy. Because when we talk about things like starting a business or going on a health journey, our initial reaction is usually, this is going to be hard. I'm going to need to force myself to be disciplined and to do things that I don't really feel like doing, or to avoid things that I really want to do or eat or whatever the case may be. So do things that you actually enjoy. Don't sign yourself up for HIIT if you hate cardio. Instead, do the Pilates or the yoga or the dance class that you absolutely love. It's getting you to the same place. It's getting you to a place on your health journey, but it's happening in a way that is actually enjoyable and is actually sustainable. And to tie it into the business example, if you're talking about marketing channels, just focus on one thing. Just focus on something like marketing on Instagram or marketing on YouTube or whatever it may be, or doing cold calls. I don't know. My whole work is in social media, so that's kind of where my brain lives. But whatever it may be, it's to start with something that you enjoy and that isn't necessarily easy, because you do need to challenge yourself, but not in a way where you feel like you're always running uphill and forcing yourself to do something that doesn't bring you any satisfaction or joy. That's not a way to live your life, and it is absolutely not the way that you're ever going to accomplish anything big in your life, because it's not sustainable. And even if you do have the ability to force yourself to do these things, well, that's a pretty sad way to live your life, and I don't want that for you. Next is to focus on your output rather than your outcome. When you're tracking things like say you're on a health journey, it serves you so much better to focus on how many workouts you did this week, how you feel, rather than whether the number on the scale is going down. Focus on the output, focus on what you do, focus on what you can control rather than the outcomes. For consistency's sake, if we're talking about a business, focus on how much work you put out there, how many calls you make, how many videos or reels or whatever your venture is, how much you put out, rather than how many dollars you make. That will come, but when it comes to building up your confidence, especially at the beginning of a really big journey like either of these things or something different, all you can control is the output that you do. Okay, now I'm going to talk about dopamine, because it's really important and it can sometimes be, not that it's misunderstood, but it can mean different things in different contexts. So here's what it means in relation to motivation and how to use it to your advantage to help you accomplish your goals. The most important thing that I think there is to understand about dopamine is that it is released in the pursuit of goals. It is not released in the accomplishing of goals. So what that looks like is dopamine is released like this as you are going after something. And it has been proven that you are happiest when you are pursuing something that you're passionate about. That has been scientifically proven to lead to more happiness than the actual goal. We've heard that before in lots of different examples or in lots of different contexts, that what really matters most, it's the journey, not the destination. And it's a cliche, but it is so true. It is scientifically proven with neuroscience that that is the case. So what you need to do is learn how to attach dopamine to small wins, not just accomplishing the big goal, but to attach dopamine to tiny little wins along the way and the process itself, because that is what will fuel sustainable motivation. You're not looking for a motivation hack, because there isn't one. What you're looking for is how to sustain the dopamine along the way to keep you going to get to your goal. It's not about motivation. You can't create that. It's about managing the dopamine along the way. Another note about the journey versus the destination is that focusing too much on the end goal is just about a guaranteed way to lead to burnout. And the thing is, I'm sure everything that I'm sharing in this video you've probably heard before. This is probably not news to you, but you clicked on this video because you need the motivation. We've already talked about how you don't need the motivation. You need everything else to help support you along the way. So you need to balance your efforts with self-reward along the way. Don't save your joy and your pride for when you hit that big giant milestone. That's not what it's about. That's not going to keep you going. That is going to lead to burnout. So for the people in the back, again, you're not looking for motivation. You think you need motivation. You don't. What you need is to make the process more enjoyable and sustainable and rewarding for yourself. So that way you can keep moving forward without feeling like you need the external validation or push from motivation. You don't need more motivation. Check out this video next where I talk all about feminine energy, because The only way to accomplish your goals is to be aligned. Don't forget to sign up for my newsletter down below. There's nothing worse than a crappy newsletter, so I promise not to send you one. Subscribe and I'll see you next time.